Hi, welcome back to another video. So as you would have seen from the title and the thumbnail, today we are going to be reading controversial favorite books of 2022. So what I mean by controversial is that while I was compiling my list of books to read like booktubers' favorite books of 2022, right, I also watched their worst books list, and while watching all the different booktubers that I liked, I realized that there's quite a few where one booktuber would list it as their favorite and another booktuber would list it as their worst. So I was like quite interested to do a video on reading these books to see if where my stand lies, like whether I would find it a good book or a not so great book. So that's the whole video concept for this idea. I will not show you the list because I have already kind of roughly showed you the ones for the best books of the year video, which I would believe has already gone up when this video goes live, so you can check it out up above. I'll link it for you. So I'm just gonna go straight into it. So the first book that I am reading for this video is actually Every Summer After by Carly Fortune.
I really loved this book just because it reminded me of Love in Other Words, which is one of my favorite books ever. I just thought the romance was really cute.
My number one book that I decided is my favorite of the year is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I just love this story, honestly. Like, I read it so quickly because I was completely engrossed in these characters and their will they, won't they, it's been years sort of thing, and that trope is just like my favorite.
I feel like I probably should have looked into why this book was so popular before I had read it, because if I had known that this was going to be kind of like a childhood friends to lovers kind of story, I don't think I would have picked it up in the first place, because that's just not a trope that I'm interested in reading, and I just didn't feel anything. I think part of my issue with books like this is the fact that they're marketed as adult romance books, and then, you know, every other chapter you're reading about 13-year-olds and their romance for a lot of the book. You know, a lot of the book is their romance when they're teenagers, and I just find it so frustrating because I don't usually like reading young adult romance. Like, that's not something I'm usually seeking out when I pick up a book like this, and so it's just frustrating because I'm like, I don't really care about this 13-year-old romance section, and then I don't really care about their romance when they're reconnecting as adults, because I don't love the like reconnecting with friends to lovers. Like, I don't care that much. And also, oh my gosh, the reason why I'm so shocked that this book is as loved as it is because of something that happens towards the end of this book that is just oof. Like, these characters make a decision that is just nearly like irredeemable in my opinion, and I guess I don't understand why this book is as popular as it is because of that one aspect in the book. I'm like, how do you ship this romance after you know that, after you know something that happened, you know? So it just kind of ruined any enjoyment that I had over this book, which was little to none already, and like, this is just not my kind of romance.
So I have the library copy, but this is due tomorrow, so I'm gonna have to speed read this. It is October, everybody. Happy October. I don't know when this video is gonna go live. So this book was listed as a favorite book by Haley in Bookland, and it was listed as a worst book by Gabby Reads. This is quite interesting because for Gabby, I wrote down a note saying that we got pieces of her and 9 Lives in common in that we didn't enjoy it in 2022. From this list, I would think that I would be more aligned with Gabby in that I wouldn't like this book. And actually, I'm currently at chapter 9, which is at page 131 out of 304, which is 43%. So actually, before I went into this, right, I really doubted that I would like it, because one thing, so far my taste seemed to align more with Gabby, and I don't seem to work well with, is this considered second chance romance? Yeah, it's second chance. And this one is like, it alternates in chapters between present day and what happened 5 summers ago. And actually, I haven't even told you the story. So this story, it is about Persephone and Sam. So Persephone, she was 13 when her parents decided to like rent a cabin house in this small village as like a summer vacation kind of thing for Persephone to just get away from their life in the city where they're from, because at that point she was actually going through bullying. Her friends kind of like alienated her, ostracized her. It made her like really dread wanting to go to school. And her parents are like two scholars or professors, with Percy, also known as Persephone, as the only child. So they're like, anything you want, we'll give it to you, things like that. And then so that summer they visit that cabin slash lake house kind of thing. And then they discover that they live next door to this family with the mother known as Sue, the brother Charles or Charlie, and the main male character Sam. And so they form a friendship from there. Sam and Percy hit it off really well because they're the same age. They have matching friendship bracelets, things like that. And they were actually like really close and starting to discover their feelings for one another as the summers progressed. But something happened that caused everything to go like really wrong. So from then, Percy kind of lost contact with Sam, and she also kind of lost contact with her other friend Delilah, who was also her bully when she was 13, but then they became friends. So we don't know what happened yet because we're going like forward from the beginning point in the summer all the way to connect with what happened now. And what happens now is that Sue, the mum of Sam, actually passed away in present time. So Percy decided to go back after so many years to like attend the funeral and reconnect with Sam at the same time, try to apologize for what she did because apparently it was her fault, but we don't know what happened yet. So yeah, that's the point I'm at in the story. And actually I'm really intrigued. Like I really didn't expect myself to enjoy this because I don't do well with second chance romance. Maybe later on in the story when I discover what happened, I might be like, okay, this is not for me, but for now I am actually enjoying it, which is really good because September hasn't been the greatest reading month for me. Actually it's October already, so I guess a new month, a new me hopefully, and I will actually enjoy this book. So I will come back again to update once I'm done with the story. That's all I'm gonna say. Hi! I wanted to update on how I finished Every Summer After. Actually it's been a week, but I haven't had the time to come and update because I have been working during the day, and during the day I'm in office, right? So I have no sunlight to do so. Let's start with trigger warnings first. I guess it might be considered a spoiler, so I'm gonna put a spoiler. I'll leave the spoiler warning on so that if you don't want to notice what the triggers are, for fear that it might spoil you, you can skip ahead. Trigger warnings for panic attacks or disorders, death of a parent, infidelity, sexual content, cancer, and grief. So okay, I understand now why it is a divisive book, I would say, because of the cheating element. So okay, without spoilers first, this book, I felt it was a very wasted opportunity for me because I was really loving it. Like I was having a reading slump, but when I was reading this book, I was very invested in the story. I really wanted to continue picking up the book and reading it, even though, as I mentioned before, I'm not a fan of second chance romances. But then towards the end, when we finally understand what happens between Sam and Percy all those years ago, I was like, oh, I cannot forgive what happened. So like I don't support them getting back together. So I guess this book is also another reminder of how I don't like second chance romances, but the build up was so good and it was very steamy book. In the end I decided to give it 2.75 stars, and I guess that's like a slightly below average rating, and I guess I would stand with Gabby for this one in that I don't enjoy this book as much as Hayley did or other people that love this book did, because I can't see past the thing that happened. Okay, now on to spoilers, right? Oh my god, I'm so sad that cheating had to be used in this story. Like, why it can use like literally any other third act conflict kind of trope. Like I would have even be happy with just miscommunication, but I cannot accept cheating. And the fact that she cheated on Sam with his brother Charlie is even worse. Like, and they were sober doing it. Like, not that if you were drunk it would have been better, but she was sober and it didn't even occur to her that, oh, this is a bad idea because this is literally her boyfriend's brother. But she just wanted like validation and to feel wanted. Oh my goodness, I really can't. Like, I guess if you want to show love is messy, then sure, but I don't support them getting back together. I just hate that. I didn't like that part, so that's why I gave it 2.75 stars. In the end, yeah, I guess I really understand why the purpose of this video and why these books are so divisive, which is very interesting for me as I read it, because I'm like trying to guess which part that people don't like and people like. Okay, I'm gonna leave you now and come back when I start reading the next book.
This book stands out to me so much as one of my favorite books of the year because of the, you heard me right, sibling dynamics. It just felt so authentically New York and authentically sibling, if that makes sense. It's complicated, but it is very much what family is, and I cried at the end.
The worst book of 2022 I read in the month of January. So I found one of my favorite books and also one of the worst books of the year the first month of 2022. I used to love The Color Yellow, but now The Color Yellow reminds me of Yolk. And every time, anytime that I see or even think about Yolk, I get an allergic reaction. I'm being extremely dramatic, but I feel like I have the right, because this book put me through so much, and for what? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't even think I had to ask for this, but apparently you do. All I should have asked for is a book that doesn't think eating disorders is a quirk. It's not something that makes your character interesting. It's not your whole personality either. I should have known. That was a little bit too much to ask for, apparently. And so many people were saying like, oh, this reminded me so much of my sister. Like, my sister and I are so much like this. And I remember always being worried for these people because this is a very unhealthy and toxic relationship. I'm not saying anything bad about you and your sister and your relationship and how you decide to deal with life, but I'm saying that this book depicts a very toxic and unhealthy sister bond. I think my main issue with this book was the writing. I think I remember being extremely triggered by this book. I'm gonna be honest with you, I've read 1-star books better than Yolk.
Hi! So I'm finally updating this video because I finally finished the second controversial book of 2022, and that book was Yolk. So let me just get my review out. This was listed as a favorite by Noelle, and it was a worst book by Bella from Throne of Pages. And so what Noelle said was that she liked the sibling dynamics of the story, and it was very messy. It felt very realistic. And for Bella, she mentioned that she didn't like how eating disorders were used as like a quirk for the main character, and the sibling dynamics that Noelle liked. Bella feels that it's a very toxic relationship. That's the gist of what she says in her review. And for me, when I first read this book, I already was quite apprehensive going in because I have previously read Emergency Contact, and I did not like that book at all. I just felt like there was a disconnect between the characters and Mary H.K. Choi's writing and what it was getting to me. And when I picked up this book, the beginning part, I was like, okay, this feels like a bit better than Emergency Contact. Maybe I will like this. But I think as the book progressed, I started to side more with Bella. So, okay, let me give you trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for alcohol, body dysmorphia, bulimia, bullying, relived, cancer, disordered eating, infertility, mentioned miscarriage, parental abandonment, profanity, racism, self-harm in the form of disordered eating, and slut-shaming. So this book is really quite heavy, so be careful. My issue with this book when I was reading it was I just felt like the main character is really unlikable. I have a total of 15 highlights, 14 of which are yellow, which means that I highlighted them because I was like, what am I reading? I agree with Bella in that I feel like the relationship is very toxic. Like, your sibling dynamic can be messy, but it doesn't have to be so toxic. And I don't know how, like, I have a sister, right? And we communicate through bickering, but we don't hurt each other to the point where June and Jane hurt each other. Oh my god, I haven't even explained what this story is about. Okay, so this story is about Jane and June, two sisters, two Korean American sisters who are in New York, and they haven't been in touch in a while because they don't have the closest relationship. But one day June just gets in touch with Jane, if I remember correctly. Jane eventually moves in with June because June is the older sister. She's like doing better, more well off. Jane is like a struggling person in New York trying to get by as a fashion student. Her apartment has like dead cockroaches. She just broke up with a guy who was into polyamorous relationships, and the guy was just like basically freeloading off of her, things like that. And so she eventually moves in with June. Around the same time, June lets her know that she has cancer and she is very sick. And so that's when the story is a little bit more complicated because we're dealing with both of the sisters trying to deal with the fact that June has cancer. Their story unfolds from there on how they grew up in Texas with their family and how toxic it was like to stay with their parents and things like that. And so yeah, I feel like Jane is a very judgmental character on others equally as much as on herself. So she has an eating disorder, and she also eventually gets judgmental on her sister as well, and I'm just like this is too much, you know. And yes, she did, I would say that a part of the reason why she became like this and has like an eating disorder was partly because of the way that she grew up and the way that her parents, her mum, the people around her would make comments about her weight, on like her appearance, things like that, and that really contributes to it as well. But it doesn't equate to, oh, everything is because of everyone else. She has some part to take on that also. She doesn't need to be so judgmental on, I don't know, everybody else. But she's also not the only unlikable character. I would say that June is also really quite unlikable as well. Like, they are both unlikable characters. And okay, let me just read like a few of the quotes that I highlighted in yellow. She needs to go the fuck back to work. She might be sick, but she's pelting me with 80-hour work weeks worth of determination and problem solving. I know it's spoiled and reckless, but for a moment I'm jealous of June's cancer. There's such powerful recognition in the diagnosis. Everybody respects cancer. Being sick with cancer will explain my sadness, my sickness, my anxiety, and the horrible suspicion that everyone in the world was born with a user's manual or a guide to personal happiness but me. And then the sister, like June, right? She will say things to Jane such as, first of all, you are a bum. Second of all, borrow something. I am the heir, you're the spare. You owe me your whole life. You wouldn't even be here if it weren't for me. And then things like, oh, her mother would, okay, for example, when June and Jane would go back to visit their parents back in Texas, the first thing her mom did was like lift up her shirt or something and peer at her stomach and see like, oh, let's see like whether you got thinner or fatter from the last time I saw you. And I'm just like, huh? Oh my god, that's so unhealthy. But yeah. Oh, and I also feel like the writing is like a little bit cringe. Okay, I can't decide because the writing gives off the way that the characters speak gives off very like cringy, Gen Z, YA vibes, but the contents of the book gives me new adult vibes. So they talk a lot about sex and maturing and adulthood, things like that. But it's just like a mesh, I would say. So eventually I decided to land on 2.5 stars because it's not a favorite, definitely. I don't feel like I would recommend this book to many people because I don't personally agree with, like, there are some times where books are difficult to read, but I feel like they are important reads because it teaches you something. But for me, when I read this book, I was just like, what am I supposed to learn? I don't understand. And the ending was really like anticlimactic. I was like, what was the point if you're not gonna give me an ending? Yes, I understand that you're trying to tell me that relationships are messy, but there needs to be some conclusion if you're telling a story. It just feels like a weird way to end a story. Yeah, I guess I'll side with Bella on this one. That's book 2 down. Hopefully I'll get to book 3 soon and I'll update you with my review.
Things We Never Got Over is another small town romance, which was like my thing this past year. I don't know why. It's grumpy sunshine and so good. Kind of single parent trope, forced proximity. She's living on his property and he's so grumpy. She also works for him. She just moved to the small town and he has such a soft spot for her, but he doesn't show it. He's like so mean to her at first. And then there's all this drama with her family and everything in the small town, and remember having butterflies while I was reading this.
I just didn't enjoy this book, which was so sad. Overall, this book was just so disappointing because it was going for that like charming small town romance thing. I think it was trying to go for, again, like a slow burn sort of Mariana Zapata thing, but again in a small town setting, and it just does not accomplish that. I didn't find the sex scenes hot. In fact, I found them a little bit repulsive. I remember distinctly as I was reading going, ew, and like highlighting some scenes because I was like, I don't like the way milking is being used here. It's just not really for me. And I just think that Knox and Luann don't really act their age, and I'm not saying that you have to have your life figured out at any age, but I would like to see some signs that you've lived a little bit, and these two characters feel like they could be 21 and not like this book. And you know, if you do, that's awesome. Maybe you are taking something away from it that I'm just missing, but I feel like a lot of the messages here were a little heavy-handed too, so it just wasn't for me. 2 stars.
We Never Got Over, which in a nutshell is how I fucking feel about this book. I will literally never get over it because the time I spent, weeks. No matter how many times I skipped the smut scenes, it still took me fucking weeks to read and complete this book. Oh my god, where do I even begin? You know, I truly don't understand it. I don't get it. What's the deal with full-fledged adults, grown-ups, writing their characters who are in their 30s and 40s? 30s and 40s, ladies and gentlemen. 30s and 40-year-old, but they talk and banter with each other like they're fucking 16. And you know, I get that when, you know, maybe it's like a kink or a fetish, whatever, that you want to be a baby or talk like it, but that's like private, you know? The relationship between these two, it's like public and out for everyone to see. The banter in here, the conversations, the dialogue between the two love interests. I lost brain cells. I truly lost brain cells reading this book. I cannot fathom how anyone, even if you like trashy romance, can find this dialogue hot. This book did not need to be, what, almost 600 pages? I heard that this book actually went through another round of edits after, you know, it being released in the world and whatever. It was condensed and it was shorter because there were so many mistakes in here where I was just like confused and a little surprised that this book is popular and out there as it is, because there's just so many errors. Like, it truly felt that I was reading the purest and rawest form of like fanfic out there or Wattpad. This is truly one of the worst things I've ever read in my entire life because it was so goddamn boring. Listen, if you're gonna write a 600-page book, at least give me something, please. For the life of me, I cannot even begin to tell you. Nothing happens in this book. You can honestly read like the first 50 through 100 pages, skip, read to the end, like the last 30 pages. You're gonna get the whole story. Smut scenes included, okay? Everything else in the middle, nothing happens. It's like this book only went through its first round of edits and everything was okay. They're like, great, you're good to go.
Hi! So I have finally finished my third book for this video. I think it's the third. My third controversial book of 2022, and that book is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. And okay, these are my tabs over here, like little cute lambs. Sheep, I think. This was in Steph Borer's top 10, and she said that she got butterflies while reading this book, and all the different tropes like grumpy sunshine, forced proximity, fake dating, also single parent trope. She also works for him. And then this is on Chandler's most disappointing books of 2022, which I would say, I mean, it's not as bad as the worst, but she also felt that it disappointed her, so it's kind of like a difference, right? She felt that it didn't accomplish what the book wanted to do, which was like a charming small town vibe with slow burn, similar to From Lukov with Love. I have since finished the book, right, as I mentioned. Let me give trigger warnings first, okay? Okay, trigger warnings for abandonment, gun violence, domestic abuse, kidnapping, death of parent, infertility, and addiction. So what this story is about, I think I haven't even said, is that we follow Naomi, who is a runaway bride, and she came to this small town called Knock 'em Out, because her twin sister called Tina called her and was like, I need help, I need you to come down and help me and things like that. And being the good sister that she is, she just decides to run away from her wedding and just come and help her sister out. That was when the story started. Like, she came into a coffee shop and then this super grumpy guy called Knox came into the shop and was like, you are not supposed to set foot in this store, get out, I need to take the trash out, which is Naomi, right? Then we find out that he thought Naomi was Tina. They don't like Tina because Tina is a troublemaker. She does a lot of bad things in the town, so she's hated by people in the town. And then that's their first meeting. But then from there, she finds out that her car has been stolen, her money has been stolen, and when she gets to her motel room, she finds an 11-year-old teenage girl there called Waylay, and that is Tina's daughter. And then we discover that Tina has abandoned Waylay, and now Naomi has to deal with all of this. And then the story progresses from there. Quite a lot of things happen since this book is quite thick. But for me, as I read this story, I felt like at the start I was very, very close to DNFing, but I pushed through because, I mean, it's for this video, right?
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
And I need an answer as to where I stand. Like, do I like this book or do I not like this book? But at the start, I really was like, oh, why are they so childish? Like, what is with all these dramatics? And as the story progressed, we see how Knox is just this super grumpy character, until the point where I'm just like, this book's characters are caricatures of what they're meant to represent. Like, I've never seen someone, okay, I've seen grumpy characters, but the way that he's just overly grumpy is like all the typical, like, before 10 a.m, very grumpy. He's attracted to Naomi, right? Any guy that gets close to Naomi, he gets grumpy. He sees Naomi wearing a tight skirt, he gets grumpy. And I'm just like, oh my god. And Naomi also, she's like, her character is this super overprotective worrier, puts others above her own needs, and then it just keeps getting repeated throughout the book. Before I proceed, let me just save you the pain if you don't want to listen. I gave this 2 stars, so I am on Chandler's side for this one, which surprised me because at the start I was like, okay, I don't really like this, it might just be a 3, but I dropped to a 2 the further the story progressed. And this story is so long. I don't like the language that Knox and the other guys used in this story. Actually just the language used by the characters in general, because they just either objectify Naomi or Naomi just puts Knox in a box, like, and they're so childish. Okay, wait, sorry, I'm not coherent because everything is just off the top of my head, right? From their first meeting in that coffee shop, the logical thing, like, let's say you realize that Naomi is Tina, then you'll just be, oh sorry, like, you know, get on your way. Knox obviously pissed off Naomi, so Naomi didn't want anything to do with him, but then Knox was very insistent. He was like, I'm gonna drive you to the motel, get in my car. And then Naomi was like, I can get a cab, what is the point? Naomi doesn't really forgive Knox because from that encounter she's like very like shocked, right? I mean, if somebody called you like take out the trash, you'll be angry, which I understand. But let's say Knox wanted to go with them to the mall, and then Naomi would be like, you're the kind of guy who wears his clothes until they disintegrate, and then you either start wearing something some female relative got you for Christmas, or you order the same exact thing you wore out online. You do not go to malls, you do not shop with girls. Like, how do you know that about Knox? Oh, and then it's so weird because, okay, Knox mentioned that, I feel like it's spoilers, so I have no spoiler-free thoughts. I just need to talk about this in depth with all the different tabs that I've tapped just because I need to rant. But okay, move along if you are not interested in listening to spoilers. So at the mall, I think Naomi needed new underwear, so she went into the underwear store. I think also it was kind of like a deterrent to get Knox to stop following her around. I followed her, and then he was like, okay, I'm buying you the underwear. And then Naomi was like, why are you buying me underwear? That's so weird. And he was like, if this is what it takes to get out of this fucking store without passing out from a goddamn hat on, I'm buying you the fucking underwear. The number of times hat on is mentioned in this book, and this is fueled by the fact that Knox, he doesn't like Naomi, but he's attracted to her, which I'm like, okay, not really understanding that, but sure. So hence why the number of times hat on is mentioned, right? But it's also like Knox uses it as like a normal word, so he's like, he has a hat on for this, that kind of thing, which I don't normally hear or read about being used in books. So I just felt a bit like, okay, that's a bit too much. Maybe it's like the small town language, I don't know. I guess one good thing that I liked about this story is that Knox has a nickname for Naomi, of which he calls her Daisy, short for Daisies, because the first time they met she wore daisies in her hair, and then when he bought her a phone, the phone case has sparkly daisies on it. Like, that's the only thing. I'm just going chronologically, okay? And then it's like the grumpy guy who cannot stand women crying, and then he says things like, you're having some kind of breakdown? Cause I sure as hell have better things to do than watch that. Oh, and then okay, here is a quote where he was objectifying her. So okay, Knox has a brother called Nash, and Nash also finds Naomi attractive, or maybe he doesn't, he just likes to irk Knox or something. But then Knox said, I don't care how many bullet holes you've got in you, I'm moving on that, referring to Naomi. And I'm like, huh? I don't know if this is just how they talk as brothers, but a lot of things rubbed me the wrong way for this story. Okay, and then I also found it a little bit like Knox and Nash, right? They don't really get along. And then eventually when we find out what happened, it was because growing up, they weren't like very well to do, so they would like steal and like commit crimes and things like that. But then after that, Knox won the lottery of $11 million, so he gave Nash money, but Nash took the money and used it to build a police station, which to Knox it was like, huh? Growing up, all these cops were so bad on us. They would just put us to jail for like, I don't know, stealing a candy bar, that kind of thing. And then it felt like a betrayal, but it could have been solved with proper communication, which I am like, it's another miscommunication trope that I do not like, but it got resolved. But that was one other thing that irked me. And then for the other thing, right, is that this book is super steamy, and it's like a bit the random, because there will be no prelude to it, and then like suddenly Knox will just lunge on Naomi, and it's like, oh, like I don't really like it when it's like that. For example, there was once after visiting Nash at the hospital, Knox went to find Naomi, I guess because he felt grateful because Naomi was there for him. I don't know, maybe he was like consumed by emotions at the last or whatever. They started to, you know, do the thing, and it felt very out of pocket for me. Yes, I found the quote. Felch has had a hat on for Tina ever since her husband banged Tina this summer. And then there was once when she was crying, and then Knox just like started to make out with her, and I was like, no, that's not, I really don't like when those kind of things happen. And towards the end, right, it's getting very ridiculous. ridiculous. There was the whole part where Tina came back and then I think she got abducted or something and then there was the whole thing that unfolded from there, and I was just like, this is very unrealistic, not at all like the small town vibe that I was hoping for. It's very disappointing for me because I feel the potential that this book could have become to be a favorite as long as there weren't so many like weird elements that added to it. So we have like the relationship between Naomi and Waylay, who is Tina's daughter, right? This new guardianship, that was very good to read about. The small town vibes could have been better if like portrayed well. The forced proximity, the working for him, that kind of trope also could have been done well. It's just that the execution was not so... It's like a disappointment, but I guess I can get why a lot of people like it if they can overlook all these things, or maybe it just didn't rub them the way it did for me, which was why I didn't really enjoy it. If you want small town vibes, right, please read When in Rome and Practice Makes Perfect, because I gave those two books 5 stars. I felt like this book could have done with lesser tropes and spend more time on each segment such that it's not like a lot of things put together. So that's all I have to say for this video. Oh my god, it's been 20 minutes. Yeah, I need to go. This video cannot be too long, so I will update you again when I read the 4th book for this video.
It's not for most people. I am very hesitant to even include it, and I feel like a disclaimer is needed that my favorites list should not be taken as a recommendation list. So all of you who I know are out there who are going to build a TBR based off of this, don't you dare say I recommended it. It shouldn't really be categorized as horror. The synopsis itself is kind of misleading. It's more of a general fiction story. It's pretty pretentious, and I just had so much fun. I read this 4 times this year, twice physically, twice via audio. I would recommend it on audio because I think it's kind of easy to skip over her annotations or not read them until the end of a page, and the audiobook just does such a great job of inserting her commentary at the right place with just the right of tongue-in-cheek style. It's kind of about nothing. You can just add it to my list of favorite books that have no plot. It's not really scary or supernatural,
but this was just so not for me. Like, this was so frustrating to read. I feel like Art Barbara is one of those protagonists who comes across like so pretentious, and like the way that he's written just drove me absolutely crazy. It became so annoying because it would be like these two characters trying to tell the same story, and then the other character would constantly be like, no, you're telling it wrong, or you're making me look bad, you're making yourself look good, like this is not how it happened. And I was just like, okay, then what the fuck is the point of any of this? Like, I'd rather just read the finished product. I don't want to read this. This feels like a rough draft. And like, not to mention, this book is just so fucking slow and boring. Like, literally nothing happened. There's nothing horror really for me in this book. Like, there might be a few little moments where it kind of feels like it could start leaning more into the horror category or genre, and it just never quite goes there. So frustrating to read. Like, this book actually might be my Everest that I read this year. I don't know why I finished it. I really don't.
Hi! That was way too excited for what I'm going to say. But okay, first things first, I cut my hair. Oh my god, look at how short it is. Actually, right? This length like quite nice. I don't know, maybe it's just like how I feel now. I layered my hair. So this is the length of my hair until here. To here. But I layered it so that the front part is shorter. Oh, but I feel like actually I wouldn't mind this length also. But I wanted to try layer the first time. And totally not related to this video, okay? It was the first time where I went to a salon and I showed the hairstylist a picture of what I wanted, and then he just cut what I wanted. I'll leave the photo inspo here. If it's not similar, don't tell me. I don't want to know. Anyway, I have been introduced to the bane of my existence. This book is The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. It was on Books and Lala's Best 10 Books of 2022, and it was on Gabby Reed's Worst Books of 2022. And I'm very aware that it is now 2024. I'm nothing if not consistent in being behind in my content. But oh my goodness, this one I have to put a disclaimer because Books and Lala herself mentioned her list shouldn't be like a list that you make recommendations out of, or like you make TBRs out of, because some books that she loves, she knows that it will not appeal to a wider audience, which is what I am. But okay, I think it depends, because she also liked Confessions, which I also read, and you can see for yourself how I felt about the book. For The Pallbearers Club, what the book is about, right? It's about this character called Art Barbara. That's not his real name. because he's going by like an alternative name. This story is set in the late 1980s. He is a 17-year-old high school loner who listened to hair metal, had to wear a monstrous back brace at night for his scoliosis, and started an extracurricular club for volunteer pallbearers at poorly attended funerals. His new friend thought the pallbearers club was cool, and she brought along her Polaroid camera to take pictures of the corpses. Art comes to believe that the friend is actually a vampire, and he's trying to find evidence to prove that she's a vampire. But what's interesting about this story is that it is from the perspective of Art, decades later, trying to write the whole story out in a memoir. So you're reading Art's memoir, and the thing is, the friend came across the memoir. So she comes in and like apparently scribbles on the page. I wouldn't know because I'm listening to the audiobook, but what's happening in the audiobook, right? She will cut into Art's narrative and be like, no, that's not what happened. Here's what actually happened. Things like that. Which, from the premise, the way of the format seems very interesting, but I don't know why whenever I try to read it via the audiobook, I even tried to find an ebook, but I don't know why my ebook is very like disconcerting in that it keeps repeating certain pages after a while, and then it really like irritates me. So my main source is the audiobook, but every time I listen to the audiobook, my mind just switches off. I don't know if it's because of the setting, because I don't really like historical fiction. I don't know if it's because we're just reading about their friendship / relationship. I don't know, I just get very bored, and I feel like the summary / premise built up more than what the actual story could deliver in terms of the execution. So I'm going to do something unprecedented and say that I'm going to DNF this book, because I really don't think I'll give it a good rating, and I'm very bored. I am at 29% in out of 11 hours, and I honestly cannot tell you what I've learned so far. Mainly, I remember their first few sessions of attending the funerals, but that's it. And then it's like, I think I heard like a transcript or recording of them talking about the vampire part, but then I really couldn't care less. I don't want to force myself through the story just to tell you that I don't like it, or skim to the end and then also tell you that I don't like it. I really don't think I'll like this, so I'm going to DNF and stop here. So I mean, if I had to choose a side, I guess I would be on Gabby's side, because I didn't really want to finish it, right? And in 2024, I want to be kinder to myself and not force myself to read books even if they're for videos. So yes, after my long-winded excuse, I'm just here to say that I will not be finishing this book. And I guess if you count it as like you didn't even finish the book, your opinion is not valid, then so be it, you know. Then you can read the book for yourself and you can let me know whether you liked it or not. I will officially return it after record it on Call Pow that I DNF the book. Yes, okay, means I have one last book to complete for this video and I can finally post it like 1 year late. I'm sorry.
They were such a surprise. They held such a strong place in my mind for so much of the year. What I will say is if this was edited, it would probably be really, really well. I don't know. If this was edited, it would be better. But it's still fun. It's still crazy to see just like the situations that these girls get themselves in.
I was told that this was the one. This was so bad. It was so bad. I feel like series like this is why some people are scared of picking up indie published, like self-published books, because it's not even objectively passable. It's bad, like at the core of it, grammatically, logistically, it's bad. And I don't say that lightly. Obviously everybody is entitled to their own opinion. If you like this series, then I'm happy for you, but like I don't feel like, even the people who like it, I don't feel like you can deny that even down to the writing, the setup, the everything about this is objectively not good, and whether you enjoy it or not is separate to that. This is a bully romance, but this is a bully. If somebody did to me what these boys do to these girls, I don't know how this can turn into a romance at any point with any members of these 4 boys, because some of the things that they do are not only outrageous, they are unforgivable. It's some bad shit. It's not like the bully romances that I've typically read where like things get a little bit out of hand, but like there's a line that's never crossed. These guys are stepping over that line constantly to a point where I found it uncomfortable to read. I don't care about the plot, because is there one? It's not interesting. The guy, like Seth,
Oh, what a creep. What a creep. There is one thing that I do like about this series, and it is the kind of direction that the relationship with one of the twins, Darcy, I think is the one is going in. And that did intrigue me, but sadly not enough for me to read any more books in this series, because at this point I just can't overlook how bad it is.
I'm finally here to close out the video. Oh my goodness. Okay, so yesterday I started reading Zodiac Academy, The Awakening, which was the first book in the series, and this was on Brittany Bibliophile's Best Books of 2022, and it was on Becca and the Book's Worst Books of 2022. Becca found it to be really cringe and it was very bad, like the writing wasn't good. This book has a lot of non-consensual things, as it's like marketed as like a bully romance. So in bully romances, there is a line that is never crossed. I'm quoting from Becca. In this book, all the lines are crossed. On the other hand, it was her best book of 2022. So I haven't even told you what the book is about. Oh my goodness. So this story, we follow two twin sisters, Darcy and Tori Vega. They have been living like normal lives, trying to make a living, and then they've been towing the criminal territory by breaking in and entering and things like that, right? And that was the point where on one of their incidents, they met Orion, who is a professor at the Zodiac Academy. And so it's like a Harry Potter moment, you know. So they just turned 18. Apparently once they turned 18, they have been giving off a signature that their kind can sense from their world, which is a different world from one that they live in. And then he was like, okay, if you are Fae, you're not human, you have an unawakened power in you defined by the stars themselves, and you belong in Solaria, a mirror world of Earth where the Fae rule. And then he reveals that you are actually the long lost heirs to the throne. You're both Gemini. Your parents are not really your parents. They swapped you when you were born to protect you. You can inherit the inheritance, which you will only get after you enroll at Zodiac Academy. From there, they'll get full board, have their own beds, which will be covered by the inheritance, and then they'll receive a monthly stipend from it, and they'll get it once they graduate, but only when you graduate. So that's why they agreed to go, because they are like not doing very well financially. And I think their human parents also died also in a car accident. So then they go over, and of course they are shunned because there is an acting power to the throne, who are 4 guys known as the Celestial Heirs, and ever since the royal family was believed to be murdered, they have been training to take over the throne once they are of age or something like that. But then now it is revealed that, you know, the long lost heirs are back, so of course there is some tension between the two sides. And then there's a lot of like bullying, because the 4 guys, the 4 Celestial Heirs, are trying very hard to get Darcy and Tori to leave Zodiac Academy. And so that's where the story progresses. I guess they play into the whole thing of like Faes being very cruel, right? There's so much bullying and harassment involved, even from the initiation. So it's really like Harry Potter, because they have 4 houses, which are the 4 elements: fire, air, water, earth. And then, oh, what do you know? Darcy and Tori have all 4 elements, even though most only have 1 and then at most 2. They have to choose one house. So they were forced to split up because they cannot have too much power in a certain house. Darcy is in the air one and Tori is in fire. And it's also a little bit more complicated because it's not just the houses. There's also something called the orders, which is like, I guess they are shape-shifting forms, if that's what I'm understanding correctly. There are 2 main types. So parasitic forms and mutating forms. The main characters are Darcy, Tori, the 4 celestial guys, and Orion, the professor. The first book is about them just coming into this world and trying to survive in this school while dealing with the 4 guys bullying. But they are of course very handsome, so they're also like, oh, they're so hot, but their personalities are terrible, but they're so hot, that kind of thing. And then there's also something sinister going on in the background, wherein murders are happening, and it was believed to be done by the nymphs, who are the enemies of Fae, because nymphs gain power by killing a Fae, and then they'll get their power. They're also like trying to figure out what's happening. The trigger warnings for this: trigger warnings for bullying, emotional abuse, violence, sexual harassment, car accident, and death of parent, as well as non-consensual acts. Overall, I found this book, I really think you need to go in with the right mindset, in that you have to know that you cannot take this book seriously. I mean, the writing is not good. All my highlights are yellow, which means like WTF. What kind of writing is this? So one thing that is apparent in this book was the lack of punctuation, like commas in certain sentences. It felt very cringe, the dialogue. So for example, someone said, I could be your walking, talking info source if you like. This book is in first person perspective, so it's a lot of internalized thoughts. So for example, Darcy would say, maybe in Solera this was normal and I didn't want to be accused of culture shaming. And they have this thing called Faye book. Oh my god. And then it's the typical, I released a breath I hadn't realized I've been holding. And then Darcy will just be like, you literally just claimed me as your blood bag, you jackass. How can you go on with life as if nothing just happened? Don't expect flowery, beautiful writing from this book. Okay, the plot is also, it's not unique because I keep making references to Harry Potter, right? So it's like, I saw someone on Goodreads saying that it reminds them of Harry Potter crossover with Winx Club. And I was like, yes, but darker, because Winx Club is so like fun, right? And Harry Potter is not as dark as what happens in this book. So there's also like steamy scenes because there's a lot of tension, like normal tension and sexual tension. Okay, in the end I decided to give this book 3.5 stars, which I am also surprised by because I didn't expect myself to enjoy this, but I think I went in with the right expectations and to just try and get a fun time out of it. And I really read through it really quickly. Maybe because it's like the writing is not the best, right? So you don't really need to analyze every sentence. You can kind of get the gist and then you can read super quickly. So in the end I finished this in like 1 to 2 days. I don't know what I'm committing myself to because I want to continue reading just because I really like Darcy's relationship pairing. But this book I think has like 8 or 9 books, so I'm like, oh my god, is this like a new commitment I'm committing to in 2024? I do not know, but okay. I guess on this side I am leaning towards Brittany because I came in with the correct expectations, and I'm also quite surprised because I came into this knowing that the book would only get good at about book 3 or 4, but for me, book 1 was like an okay, can accept kind of read already, which I mean, I'm not complaining, so yeah. Okay, and with that, I've come to the end of this video. I feel like the books that I've read for this video have been quite a mixed bag. If I remember correctly, it's more bad than good, but I mean, at least there was some good out of it. And I'm so sorry that this video came out 1 year late. I'll try my best to edit this quickly. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed nevertheless. Let me know your thoughts on these books if you read them. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel to see more of such content. I hope you're having a great day or a great week whenever or wherever you're watching. If you're still watching, please comment a fairy emoji for Faye. Remember to stay hydrated and I'll see you in my next video.